Planning and Zoning meeting. I'd like to ask Ms. Sleet if she'd have prayer with us to open the meeting. Thank you. Do we have a motion for approval of the October 27 minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I would submit a motion to accept the minutes.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second? Okay. All in favor? Motion passes. We have somebody that's going to do the financial report. Is that you, Steve?
Yep, the financial report is in your packet. It was pointed out there's a typo on the financial report. It's minor. It's at the top in the headings. Under the year-to-date, it says October 21 to June 22. That's actually July 21 through October 21. That's our year-to-date column. The accounting service, it's just a typo in the title up there. Everything else in the financial report is correct and accurate, and I'll be glad to answer any questions about it, finance report or the balance sheet statement that's in your packet.
For a second to the motion? Thank you, Tom. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries. Okay. Steve, you want to go over the construction sureties?
Yeah, let's do that. So we got a couple housekeeping items on construction sureties, and as every month, the summary page is in your packet, should have been right behind the finance report, and shows our letters of credit projects and our cash bond project. Got 3 items we need action on today. The first one, Lakewood Acres, Maurice Homes. We are asking that the letter of credit be released in the amount of $21,428. That was a cul-de-sac project in Old Bridge. It's complete. It's been inspected and accepted by the Boyle County Fiscal Court, so everything's finished on the project. And it's at this point, it's just a housekeeping item to release the bond and formally close out the project and mail the letter of credit back to the bank.
We need a motion to do that?
We sure do.
Okay, do we have a motion to? Okay, thank you. Do we have a second to the motion? Thank you. All in favor, raise your hand. Thank you. Motion carries. I'll go over the next one,
Yep,
Steve.
second one's, this one's really is just a substitute bond, Jody Sharp Construction. This is Candlewood Section 8. We've done, as you know, we had a fairly large cash bond submitted, and then we've done a couple releases on that. Mr. Sharp brought in a letter of credit, so he is substituting the remaining cash that we're holding in our cash surety account, which is $20,806.50, and we're substituting that with a letter of credit that was submitted to our office for the remaining portion of the project, which is just the sidewalks. And the letter of credit was rounded up, so it's $20,807. So we need the Planning Commission to formally allow us to release the cash bond back to Mr. Sharp, and in its place substitute this letter of credit that'll stand until the sidewalks are complete.
Do we have a motion to accept that?
I move to accept that.
Okay, thank you. We have a second? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Thank you.
Thanks. Interesting enough, if you go back to the chart, that'll take our cash bond projects back to 0, and the only amount left in there was the interest we accrued over a number of years. The third project you see is, again, Jody Sharp Construction Incorporated. This is Hunt Farm Section 5, and the plat's actually on the screen right behind you if you want to look at it. We approved this plat approximately a year ago. This is Section 5. and it's 27 additional lots. That project's pretty much rolling along, and this is the initial letter of credit of $91,179, which is the grading and street-related items, includes the project contingency. And this item accepts this initial letter of credit and also authorizes the chairman to sign the developer contract agreement. We still need to get the administrative fee for Mr. Sharp, and then we can record this plat now that we have the bond in place.
We have a motion to accept this letter of credit. Okay, have a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand, please. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Have any more, Steve?
That's it. Thank you.
Want to move on to subdivision approval? Lisa, you want to go over those?
Vice Chair Boyd, would you want to do 1 through 7 with a motion or individually?
Let's see if we can get a motion for 1 through 7 after you've gone through them, and if we can, we'll do them that way.
Okay.
I might also note, we got a number of visitors in the room. I would make a general assumption they might be here for the public hearings, but there could be some folks here in relationship to any one of these plats, so just a reminder that we might want to, after Lisa describes each one, see if anyone's here that wants to speak on
Okay.
either side of any of these plat items.
All right.
Push it, just hold it down. Push it. Tap it. There you go.
Okay, all right. First off, we have John and Cynthia Lacey. They've submitted a plat to revise a prior plat that had a 35-foot building line setback for a property that borders Shadeland Drive and Maple Avenue. The current zoning setback is 25 foot. However, there is a structure on the lot which is non-conforming at the moment. And so the Lacey's have a variance that is to be heard to take that 25-foot setback back 6 additional feet to make the structure compliant. The plat requires some minor corrections, and it will require a notation for the variance if it is approved on the 21st. Other than that, it is ready for final approval. AGE is the surveyor.
Thank you. Is there anybody that wishes to speak for or against this application for variance? Okay, there being no one speaking for or against it, you want to continue with the next one, Lisa?
Mm-hmm. Charles Kaiser has submitted a plat dividing his 50.503 acre ag parcel into 2 tracts. The tracts front Highway 150 north of Chrisman Lane. No corrections are needed on the plat. No utility signatures are required because one tract is 45+ acres and one is 5+ acres with an existing home. Vantage is the surveyor. This plat's ready for final approval.
Okay. Is there anybody that wishes to speak for or against this? Being no one, you want to speak for it, Chuck, or? Okay. Then let's go on with the next one, Lisa.
All right. The next one we have is the Robert Toadvine Estate through Michael Wade Toadvine. They've submitted a plat for 30.447 acres. This plat, a plat much like this went through this past summer, and this plat is adjusting the size of the tracts that were established then, A, B, and C on the plat. The surveyor needs to verify that the house on tract C is either in or on the build line. If it is in or on the build line, add a non-conforming note if that is the case. and also add a non-conforming note for the shed that is lying too close to the property line, which on a prior plat listed would be demolished, but is still standing. It's ready for final approval with corrections. AGE is the surveyor.
Anybody wish to speak for or against this? All right, then go on to the next one, Lisa.
Dorothy Martin has submitted a plat that divides her 153-plus acre farm that fronts Rossell Road into tracks 1B and 1C. The plat also extends an existing easement, creating a 97.22-foot segment across track 1C for the benefit of parent tract of Martin. The lots created will require a utility signature box be added to the plat. The purpose statement also indicates that this plat's purpose is to combine the remainder of Dorothy Martin, which is tract 1, with the property of Lecky and Helen Powell. However, there's not enough information supplied as it's platted now in order to do that. The tract 1 remainder will need to be surveyed in order to combine. It's ready for approval with corrections, and additional information is needed. AGE is the surveyor, and this is ag zone property.
Anybody want to speak for or against this subdivision? All right, go on to the next one.
Sure.
Yes.
Sorry, this is the first one I've seen like this. Is it possible to approve 1B and 1C as they are and wait for the rest to be platted because you said it hasn't been done yet?
I don't think there's any way to split this up and approve it parcel by parcel. It's up or down on the plat itself.
Well, and they're trying to add a piece to the remaining farm, and these tracks also go across the street, and that's part of the issue. So, what might be appropriate, though, is to just let it sit as with preliminary approval and maybe not give it final approval, since it still has several items to sort of maybe get worked out, and run it back through tech review next month once we get the corrections in, and maybe just do another evaluation through tech review, maybe.
I like that idea.
So, because again, it brings into the property to the east side of the street, and we didn't have any information on that. That's what was kind of holding this up.
Are you suggesting it doesn't come back here next month, to this larger group?
It could come back here next month, but we possibly don't give it final approval today.
Okay.
Because the corrections are of this nature, and there's still some question about the remaining farm track and where we're adding some pieces to.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail on here that's not firmed yet. It's
I understand.
It's somewhat open-ended.
We were hoping to get the corrected plat back possibly before the meeting. It's just
Okay.
we didn't get it, so. Maybe that's what we do, is when we go down through this one, we do not give this one the final approval today. We let it sit with the preliminary approval it's gotten at the tech review, and we take it back to tech review the second Wednesday in January.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion to do that, to separate this one out as preliminary approval, and then perhaps we can do a motion to approve the rest of them at the end of the presentation? Anybody want to make a motion to do that?
We grant preliminary approval for this plat, Dorothy Martin application, pending tech review and answers to the questions that are due to B and Z before we make final approval.
Have a second to that motion. All in favor, raise your hand, please. Motion carries. Okay.
Okay.
Want to go on to the next one, Lisa?
Do we want to go back and do a motion to
We'll-
1 through 3, or
We'll
1 to
we'll
9?
catch them all.
Okay.
We'll number them.
All Next, we have Bucks, Rivard, and Siri LLC. They've submitted a plat that is dividing Tract A, which is 0.81 highway business zoned acres, from their other lands. They've got 9.110 acres remaining. The plat requires utility certificate, correction of the zoning from IBD to the correct highway business zone. The address of the parcel needs to be in the title box, and the correction of the divided Tract A and the remaining parent being Tract B. They have the tracts listed backwards, I think, or noted backwards on the plat. Sorry, y'all, lost my spot there. It's ready for final approval with corrections, and it needs a note of any easements that are pertaining to the storm drain that you see indicated on the plat.
So let me just real quick, this is the grass area in front of the movie theater, little strip of grass. It's parking lots right here for the movie theater and the church. This is they're taking, this is a driveway into the shopping center, and the sign is right there. So the sign's being moved over. This track's being conveyed, separated, and I guess is maybe gonna be under contract or sold. There's a drain that's an inlet right here, and there's a manhole here. We need an easement dashed around the manhole and exactly whatever other utilities. This drain goes over to a big drainage area in this area, and there's a curb inlet right here, or a cut into the pavement, and the water moves from here to here. So we just need to dash a drainage easement kind of in that northern tier to that storm inlet. We do know the inlet then takes the water to the south, east to the basin. So there should be any other notes. And again, this is being sold. We had a code enforcement complaint on it already about some cars parked on it. So we were pretty sure where it's heading as far as what it's gonna be. But there's no big issue with us other than just dashing that drainage easement on there.
If we can find it.
And giving us some information on that manhole cover and exactly what utility we got under the ground there.
Does anyone wish to speak for or against this subdivision application? All right. Lisa, you want to go on with the next one?
Next, we have Nancy Davis has submitted a plat to divide 2 tracts of her land from property at the corner of US 127 Bypass and Fry Lane. The commercial lot is HB zoning. Suggestions have been made for minor corrections and additions. Let's see, this,
Go ahead.
no, I'm just gonna say, this is what we call a major plat. It's gonna require bonding for the roadway to be built, I guess, it's one road.
Yep.
What are you gonna add?
Yeah, that's all I was gonna say. Really what this plat was doing is creating this right-of-way strip, so it's a major plat. This lot was already platted off months ago. I think there's a client now that's maybe heading to that corner. And one of the conditions of this road has to be built by the developer. And at the same time of platting this right-of-way, another lot's being created over here as just another opportunity. So this is a major plat. It's going to require a bond, construction contract, a developer fee, set of construction plans, approval by the city, drainage plan, all that stuff. But this plat gets that process started. And then again, we would anticipate you guys would be seeing a letter of credit on your construction surety item possibly next month.
Anybody wish to speak for or against this subdivision application? Not being anybody, Nancy, you want to go with the next one?
Okay. Next, we have Shepherd Construction and Johnny Stennett have submitted a plat that creates Tract 3A from the Stennett property to combine it with the property of Shepherd Construction, and it creates this track 2A from Stinnett. Did I just say that backwards? 2A from Stinnett to be conveyed to Shepherd Construction, and then 3A from Shepherd Construction, I think, to go to Stinnett.
Correct.
Yeah. Minor suggestions were made. This is zoned IBD. AGE's the surveyor. It's ready for final approval. It's pretty straightforward. They're just switching out some very small parcels between them. Actually, and I think Mr. Stinnett is an owner of Shepherd.
Okay. Does anybody wish to discuss this further? Being nobody stepping forward, do we want to go on with the next one?
So the next one's gonna have to be done separate, because it was a late file that Tech Review didn't see. And, so you guys are ready, if you see fit, to do a motion for final approval for items 1, 2, 3, and 5, 6, and 7.
Okay, do we have a motion for final approval for items 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7?
I make a motion to do that for
Okay,
final
yeah.
approval.
Mr. Collier, would you,
Yeah,
Mr.
okay.
Chairman, if I might suggest for Mr. Collier's motion that we note the variance required for the Lacey plats and corrections suggested by staff for Toadvine, Bucks, Rivard, Davis, and Shepherd Stinnett?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a second to the motion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Motion carries. Have
Okay.
another one to go over?
Yeah.
Yeah, this one didn't make the Tech Review cutoff. As you know, we had a odd schedule for this cycle due to these combined November, December meetings, and our filing deadlines were swapped around. Vantage is the engineer, Kendall's here. It's a pretty straightforward plat. I'll let Lisa go through it, but we did add it on the list, but it would need preliminary and final approval if the board sees fit.
Travis LaFew and Donnie Pennington have applied for an approval of a subdivision of their tract of land that contains 83.075 acres that's located at 2335 Cream Ridge Road in Junction City. The property is zoned ag. No corrections or suggestions were made. It's ready for preliminary and final approval. Simply a parent dividing up his farm parcel for division with his children, I think.
Have anybody that wishes to speak for or against this? Okay. Do we have a motion for preliminary and final
Yes, fine.
approval?
I'll go ahead and make a motion for preliminary and final approval for this plat.
Have a second? Thank you. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries. All right. So that's all the subdivision approvals we have, right?
Correct.
So I guess we want to go into a public hearing, leave the regular planning and zoning meeting, and the first item to go over is lockdown D. You want to explain
Yep.
that?
I'll do that. So this is an application by Lockdown D LLC, probably one of the more favorite names I've ever heard. Say that, try to say that 3 times real fast and see what you end up with. Lockdown D LLC. So I did a zoning shot real quick. It's this parcel right here on Whirlaway Drive. There's already storage buildings in this area. There's a vacant highway business tract right adjacent. And this is just simply adding a 11,760 square foot building on that highway business tract. It requires a site development plan simply because it's a commercial development over 10,000 square foot. That's the threshold. The front half of the lot would have the building on it, and you've got the exhibit in your packet. Right there's the exhibit. So this is the lot, and you can see there's the building. There's new pavement kind of put in. It ties these two kind of facilities together. There's landscaping as required on the front portion, and there's existing landscaping in the rear of the property already. It complies with the highway business zoning requirements in the zoning ordinance and our site development plan checklist, pretty much to a T. Went through tech review and was reviewed, and they commented favorable. It was sent out to all the city engineering, fire, and utility offices for comments, and we had no formal written comments submitted back to the office. Kendall Wise is here, the firm that did all the engineering and the site layout, and Kendall will be glad to answer any questions you guys might have about the project or the building, but it complies with everything we need as far as the zoning ordinance.
Please identify yourself and your location.
So the property owner bought these storage buildings. Most of them been there for several years, and they also bought the vacant lot, which was, I think, separate ownership prior to him buying everything. But he's going to expand upon what all he's bought, and the new building won't have a new entrance on Benally or Whirlaway, I think it's called at that point. So it's just going to tie together with the existing storage building business that's already ongoing. So there won't be a new entrance. All the stormwater goes southeast to an existing regional detention basin. We are creating a new water quality feature on the adjacent property to offset any increased water quality concerns for the new development. So we're adding a precast water quality unit in the storm sewer system on the site adjacent to it, so it'll catch sediment and trash and oils that are coming off of the almost entirely impervious site adjacent to it. So in order to offset any water quality concerns on our site, we're adding water quality device to the adjacent property, which is twice as big as our property. So it didn't have anything there before, so, and all of that's been submitted to Josh Morgan. He's approved of all of that. The only thing Josh hasn't seen was an erosion control plan, which we turned in this morning. So should be squared away with the city and have everything approved by them at this point.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Kendall before he leaves the stand? Okay. Does anybody want to speak for the zone change? Does anybody want to speak against the zone change? Okay. Not having anybody wishing to speak, do we have a motion to accept the zone change application? Okay, Henry, do you have some comments?
I just wanted to make note that the motion is to approve the site development plan for this property. So, just brief clarification. So, thank you, Mr. Davenport.
All right. We have a second to the motion? Okay, thank you, Ms. Lee.
Ms. Davenport, do you agree that this is a motion to approve site development plan? Thank you.
All right. Okay. All in favor, raise your hand, please. All right, motion carries. Okay, we have a second application for a rezoning of property. You want to go over that, Steve, or you have somebody else, Steve?
Give me 1 second, if it's okay. I see someone was just waving to me right there. Let me just
Okay.
make sure that's not related to this.
Mr. Chairman, would you like to take over the last two items of the
Jeff,
meeting, or want me to
You
continue?
got your seat right here. Right.
Okay.
We just wanted to make sure the member came in before we called the case, so then we'll record that we have 9 members present for this particular public hearing.
Okay.
Write that down. All right, so next Next item, we have a zone change request. We had an application, our application filing date was November 19th, 2021. You should all have the staff report in your packet. And I'll walk through the applicant. Legal counsel is here, as well as the Vantage Engineering. So we're going to turn most of this over to them. I'm going to go through this pretty quick, but point out just a few things. All the exhibits that are in your staff report are on the PowerPoint, just for convenience here for the public, but we're looking at a zone change request. Basically, this property is fairly large, so the Danville host property is kind of all of this, but the zone change is not going past this point right here. So the zone change is kind of just the front portion of the property along Ghost Pike, bypass. The Zuka restaurant's being built here. This is already, a portion of this is already zoned, so the zone change is going to the existing zoning and everything that's still ag up to this point right in here. This is High Tower. It's kind of this right here. So it's, none of the property to the rear is being proposed to be rezoned with this application. There's the technical exhibit that shows what's being zoned. It's being zoned in 3 different segments, highway business, R4 and R3. And I'll be glad to explain those differences if anyone needs me to. This is the phasing plan that shows the different splits and again shows the zoning outline. This is the property boundary to the south. And again, it shows multifamily. It's just generally described multifamily. Again, it's the splits are R3 and R4. There's not a hard layout at this point because there's going to be kind of a sub-developer doing the multifamily. But what's been indicated to us and was kind of shown to us in preliminary fashion at the pre-application meeting were patio homes. There were 9 sets of patio homes kind of in this area, some more general kind of townhome style or patio homes, and then more kind of traditional townhomes or multifamily in the RM4. So the RM3 is a multifamily district that does not allow you to have more than 8 units per building. The R4 lets you go beyond the 8 units to the building, and again, I think they're still working on their splits on the styles of building, but basically the multifamily or townhome, patio home development would be in this area. And then as you, again, here's where Azuka's being built. Shannon Way would continue to this point right here. And there'd be a Dean Way's already been platted. And the road would continue kind of where you already see the gravel road in front of the pond. The road would kind of go like this. And that would be an extension of Shannon Way. High Tower would come into this part of the property. And so this would be the multifamily. And this would all be continued highway business development, as you can imagine, on the Shannon Way extension. And really, there's no projects at this point that were mentioned in these areas. These lots would then become available for future highway business development. The multifamilies kind of, the more was explained to us was kind of the first phase. It would be start the residential development would be the first phase.
The pond you mentioned, is it still going to be there, or
It's
do you know?
going to be an amenity in the development, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll let Kendall speak to all that.
Yeah.
I don't want to answer their design questions because at this point, we've got a whole host of conditions that they've put together, a very detailed list of conditions, and the attorney may want to walk you through some of those. I just wanted to point out some highlights of the zoning footprint and then some unique things about the future land use map. Yes, ma'am.
You said that Shannon Way would come and make a
Right,
corner.
right.
It will or will not be attached to,
I'll let the developer explain that. They're playing around with both situations. One concept plan showed it, the road going all the way to Ghost Pike. The developer, while I was sitting in the room with the developer, told me that was not his desire to connect that street at all. And the layout I saw did not connect the street to Ghost Pike. It stopped. The road just kind of came down here and stopped to a cul-de-sac just so it could serve the patio homes in this area. There's a large buffer that's in the conditions that specifically says there'll be no development that will occur along Ghost Pike. It's a heavy landscape, natural buffer commitment along Ghost. That doesn't mean a street couldn't connect, and it was worded in the conditions that it could connect. That could connect was coming from the city engineer side a tad bit. The city was they hadn't made a decision one way or the other because we don't really have a preliminary plat. So initially, the discussion was, does the street connect to Ghost Pike or not? The developer indicated to me that was not their desire. I'll let the attorney speak to that. The city said they'd like to see a plat and make a final determination on how the streets connect with other existing streets. I think we're probably going to hear today that there's a strong desire to be no connection to Ghost Pike, but it was left open-ended in the conditions because we don't have a plat at this point, and the developer has a preference. I don't think the staff, we have a preference one way or the other. We would defer those things to the developer and the city of Danville for those final connectivity discussions. Shannon will be extended though, and there will be access points to the bypass created at these curb cuts. So there would be ultimately 3 access points on the bypass, Shannon Way, with these connecting streets. This street, there would be no access for sure on the bypass in this location. This one's kind of more open-ended the way the development plan's laid out at this point in time. And again, we'll let the applicant go through some of that. There's the zone change map that shows you what is highway business at this point. Again, a little to this point, and then the rest is ag. And again, the zone change comes right there to that line. And you can see the pond that was referred to and the existing, it's already gravel. That kind of gives you a good idea of how Shannon would look in its final configuration once it's finally designed.
And just to make sure I remember, there's a section at the bottom that we're not dealing with their property, just below the AG words there. That's
All
like,
of this, it's fairly large.
There's a section
tract.
that's not involved, okay.
Now, if you go out there, you're kind of, this gets up on top of the hill.
Yeah.
In the pond, so this is up on the hill, so everything would be developed kind of be in this footprint. And again, there's a buffer over here that would not be developed, so it'd be just kind of in this general area.
All right, thank you.
All right, so with that, I'm going to roll through the staff report fairly quickly and let the applicant do what they're here to do, which is explain everything to you guys and walk through the conditions. Front page of the staff report, again, Danville Host LLC is the applicant. This is 0 South Danville Bypass. The property size is 56.539 acres. Current zoning is ag, and you heard the proposed zoning is RM3, RM4, and highway business. And agriculture is the original zoning. The future land use map, this is an interesting part of the property. The future land use map has 3 designations on it. This is commercial, this is moderate density, and this is single family. And you can see the single family even goes further to the south on other adjacent farms. This is one of the cleanup projects that was, kind of on our to-do list, or we ever get around to. And this property, we knew it has been being developed, and we've talked with applicants several times about more development. The moderate density is interesting because I think at one point there was probably an idea that more commercial might need to occur, but interesting enough, now that the patio homes are being proposed here and kind of the multifamily, it kind of falls right in line with that moderate density land use category. So the land use under the zone change today is commercial, where the commercial is being proposed, and moderate density, where the multifamily is being proposed. And the moderate density and commercial designations are on page 1 of your staff report. And again, at this point, the applicant is not developing past this point, and all this is shown as single family as the future land use. But at this point, it's still zoned ag and is not being proposed to be rezoned today. The moderate density does allow you to do single family duplexes or multifamily. You can't exceed 16 units to the acre is what the moderate density category. This is the same land use that's been on the Danville future land use map on back through the 2017 comprehensive plan amendment, and was a similar land use that was in place in the plan 10 years prior. So this has been the land use pattern that's been on this property as far back as 2007. So with that, I'll go through the staff report pretty quick. Page 2 and 3 are your comprehensive plan goals and objectives that the staff puts in. Page 5 gets into the future land use map that I already just described. Whole bunch of verbiage about future land use that we took right out of our chapter 9 on pages 6 and 7 and 8. Page 9 is where we get into our general development plan requirement, as required in zoning ordinance 310, 3E, and 311-2 that require a general development plan. The general development plan for today is a combination of this splits of the zoning and the phasing plan, as well as you can see then on pages 9 and 10, the applicants put forward 17 development conditions. They're split out in commercial and multifamily to sort of break those out separate so they could be easily communicated for the different portions of the property if it's replatted in the future. And again, the applicant's attorneys here and worked on these. So again, what was submitted were development conditions, the conceptual phasing plan, and then in addition to that, and we stuck it in your staff report, there's a 5 or 6 page legal justification letter that was submitted by the applicant's counsel. And that was put in your staff report too, that gets into the comprehensive plan and several other things related to the project. But I won't go through all the conditions verbatim. I'll save that for the applicant to walk through. They're very detailed, they're very well written in our opinion, and I think address all the things you would assume you'd want to know about the R3, R4, highway business, access points, buffers, signage, all that stuff's kind of laid out in those development conditions in a very nice manner for the different type of developments on the property. Again, the last part of the staff report, as you know, is the staff items of concern that's on page 18. There was a reference there about the traffic study. This project's big enough that would have justified a traffic study or the submission of a traffic study. The zoning ordinance allows a waiver or exception to that to be granted if the applicant makes a request and either the city or state or the county agree to that. That justification letter or exception letter was submitted to the city engineering department, and an email came back to us to confirm the traffic study had been waived off formally for this project. At the time we sent the packets out, we didn't have we had the letter from the applicant to the city, but we didn't have the reply back from the city that granted the exception to the traffic study requirement. So no traffic study is required by way of the waiver that's authorized in the zoning ordinance.
So make sure I understand what we're saying here. That's for both the commercial and the residential
All of it.
RM3 and RM4
Correct.
access. That's what that traffic study was
It
for.
would have been, yeah.
So it covers both of those.
Traffic study threshold is 500 average daily trips on the commercial segment or combination. More than 50 residential units, single family or multifamily, would trigger a traffic study that gets you to the 500 trip generation. Also, so if we have someone come in and doing a project of 100 units or 80 units, typically we would say, hey, you need to do a traffic study. A traffic study can be waived off in certain circumstances by the higher authorities, the people that maintain the right-of-ways, if they see that there's not a traffic study needed. In the pre-application meeting, I mentioned the traffic study would be required. It was told to the applicant at that time, due to the configuration of this part of the county, specifically the bypass, the way the access points are already laid out in the median cuts, that there's really no need to do a traffic study at this point in time because we have such a major, bypass out here that can handle the volumes that this would generate.
And I'll be interested from the applicant to listen to the access for the residential,
Sure.
how that's going to flow, because that's
And
a
Kendall
different
Wise may
direction.
want to address that. He wrote the justification letter, and again, I've seen a preliminary street layout, and everything does flow to these access points here. The multifamily stays on the Shannon Road network and flows here. All the development you see here will flow to the street network, and then Hightower is extended. Just right here is where Hightower comes
Right.
in. It's extended in and just dead ends into a cul-de-sac or a travel way, and this multifamily would come right out into this street network right here. So it's kind of broke in pieces because of the topography in the pond, so this is kind of a project to itself. There's a lot of open space in this multifamily. It's a big piece of property, and so this portion would come into this street network that we already have. All of this portion comes down to Shannon and uses these access points. Or obviously, you can come up this way.
Yeah, I was just trying to wonder and understand, because in the bottom left corner is Walmart with all its traffic patterns.
Hightower goes down. and
Yeah,
connects
goes
this
down
way.
that way.
So everything ties
you get
into
far enough in
existing
there,
street
so
networks.
It becomes a very busy area.
We don't have
the zoning ordinance requires one, has a threshold that can be waived.
But the city employee can waive that?
The city engineering department, state of Kentucky, county engineer, whoever controls the right-of-ways has the authority to grant the exception if they, yeah.
Mr. Griffin, I think that the waiver should be mentioned in any motion for approval, should the commission be inclined to grant one. The standard set out in the ordinance just talks about speaking with the relevant stakeholders like city staff, city engineer, and it sounds like they've all signed off on it. So that would be the planning commission's chief consideration in granting a waiver, and they've met that bar. So you would still effectively be granting a waiver, but it appears that they've done their due diligence in order to obtain one.
And to just be frank about it, you know, what do you get in a traffic study sometimes? Well, if this was a newer development, let's say we didn't have a bypass, we had a 2-lane road. The traffic study may suggest the road be widened. Traffic study might suggest a median cut be put in. The traffic study might suggest that certain trips are moving in a direction that we need to have a decel lane built into this median. All of that infrastructure is already in place on the bypass decel lanes. The only item that was kind of referenced that's not in place, as you know, as you come into Cattleman and you turn right, there's not a dedicated decel lane to pull off and flow right into that. So really the bypass is fairly well suited for a large development or several developments, as you can imagine. The traffic study might look at signalization of intersections, possibly. You might get that, but usually you do that separate in a traffic light warrant. Sometimes traffic studies require street construction, connectivity. So, you know, again, if this was a more green development out in a 2-lane road, let's say we were way down on Ghost Pike somewhere, you can see where a traffic study might look at all those factors, movement of traffic, what's being impacted at different intersections, and suggest improvements. In this case, with the bypass being there, it seemed unlikely that the traffic study would produce much as far as capacity or level of service, since those access points are already planned out. Yeah. And it has that authority, or the state district engineer. And we'll let Kendall address that when they get to that, because he wrote the justification, or the request letter, and then we got the request back, or the waiver request back from the city, put in the file. Wanted to make sure you guys knew about it. We wanted to make sure the applicant knew the traffic study could be required for a project of this size, and that's where we're at with this application. Last thing, staff report, page 18 is the KRS 100-213 findings. As you all know, that when you guys make a finding, Henry will help you with that. The cookie cutter motion, up or down, is always the last page in staff report. That's all I have, unless you guys have any questions for me. The applicant's here with legal counsel, and we'll let them kind of give you all kind of the hard details here. And I believe there's several folks here that'd like to speak for or against the project.
So, the attorney or the applicant like to go first? Please identify yourself and your location.
Zach Cato, Billings Law Firm from Lexington. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Danville Host LLC, and Ron Pfaff. Kendall Wise from Vantage Engineering's here as well. Excuse me, this is my first time in front of you all. I do this work other places, but it's a pleasure to be in front of you today. Before I start, I just want to say it's my first time working with Steve, and you have a tremendous resource in him. He's been extremely helpful and knowledgeable and conscientious, and was much more helpful than what I've received from planning staff and other places. So I just want to say on the record that was appreciated from our end, and I'm sure you all appreciate him as well. We submitted a justification letter with our application that's in the packet. If you've read that, a lot of what I'm going to say is either going to be duplicative of either that or the staff report, but I do want to make sure that we head out at least on the high spots, and that I'm happy to answer any questions you have that I'm able to answer, and I may defer to Kendall on some of those things because I'm just a lawyer. I don't engineering stuff's way out of my pay grade. So the standard we're looking at today, this is just a zone change with the concept plan. Really, there's, of the 3 statutory standards for a zone change, we meet 2 of these, what we're going to put to today, that the application's in compliance with the comprehensive plan, and also that the current zoning, which is agricultural, is inappropriate. It's vacant, it's been vacant, the area around it has developed. So the proposed zoning is more appropriate for this property than what it currently is. So there's two different criteria that we satisfy the zone change standard for under the statute. As Steve's put to you, this is a sort of mixed development with commercial along the bypass and the residential behind it. The idea behind this is to create a sort of context-sensitive development where there's other commercial uses on the bypass next to this property that are already there. Across the bypass, there's already some commercial uses, some offices. I think there's maybe a church over there. So there's already some activity in this area. So it's consistent with what's there, and it's just a sort of a context-sensitive expansion of that instead of drastically changing the character of the area. As far as the connectivity goes, there are no new curb cuts or access points to the bypass contemplated, requested, desired. What's there is what is going to be worked with. Part of the reason that the city engineer found, my understanding, is that the traffic study wasn't required is because when the bypass was done and they evaluated it with these three access points you see with the idea to handle future traffic. It was basically baked into the work they did when that was done. And so based on that, they already know that the bypass can handle the volume of additional traffic. Now, if we built an Amazon depot or something like they're building on in Lexington right now, there would be a drastic change to the traffic. That might be different, but here it's a relatively moderate intensity use we're proposing with some probably townhouses, patio homes, and some highway commercial stuff consistent with what's already there. Steve touched on this, but just to touch on it again, the future land use map has been in place for a number of years. Our proposal basically follows that. Exactly, it was designed the way it is to sort of follow that. And so it's in compliance with that. That's not the be-all, end-all, of course, of a zone change, but it's sort of an important consideration, and it does follow those designated future land uses. On the design review procedures, in this case, we've already talked about the traffic study. One of the ones that was focused on in this plan is that residential neighborhoods should be protected from adverse impacts of proposed developments and land use changes. We've done that in a couple of ways here. One is by stepping off the intensity from the bypass as you get further away from it. So you've got the commercial, the most intense uses on the bypass where you've got the best traffic access. And then behind that is the residential. And then you see in the yellow area below that, if and when in the future that develops, which is not part of what we're doing now, it's recommended for lower density residential. So it would be an even further step down of that intensity. So that kind of protects the existing neighborhoods. It's an appropriate step up of intensity or step down, depending which way you're going there. Plus the landscape buffer that was referenced. I'll talk about that more in a minute. Between there being no access to Goes Pike desired by the applicant and the land use buffer of 20 feet to preserve any trees, shrubs, growth, whatever it is there, the idea is to keep a natural buffer and to keep Goes Pike sort of as it is, to not put new traffic on it, to not change the character of it, not to really change the look of it if you're driving down Goes Pike, to kind of keep it how it is now. So there was some, so these residential development guidance that you see on page 8 of the staff report, those are ways that we work some of those guidances into this application. Similarly with the commercial aspect of it, keeping the curb cuts where they are, using the existing and extending the existing street networks. When this development comes online, it'll result in increased connectivity because it will extend Shannon Way, build it out, and create better connectivity behind what's currently there. And so but it'll basically be an upgrade of what's there now. There'll be more road built, more connectivity, more first responder access, more traffic circulation, which is a benefit in and of itself. And then lastly, the buffering that I talked about would also apply up along on the commercial designated sections, where we're going to rezone to highway business. The buffer would be up there too to buffer Goes Pike from those as well. So it's completely down the eastern side of the property. We're proposing to keep a 20-foot landscape buffer.
Sir, Steve, would you put up the other image about we had the red, blue, or the blue, green image that we had? There was one you had, that's easier to understand, part of what you were presenting on here. With Shannon Way up in there, is that what you're talking, that gives you a line? So what you're saying there in the highway business up in the top right hand, which is in the green block there?
So all the way from where we're starting here with this proposal, all the way up here, the property that we own, the landscape buffer would stay as it is.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
And then the
Sure.
rest of this, right on the bypass, is in the state's right-of-way, or whoever owns that, it's in the right-of-way, so we can't make any changes there, but on our property, we would keep it
How about
as it is.
conditions submitted as one street access point to those lots?
That's what Steve was referencing. It's not being taken off the table because the city had indicated that they would want to look at that when the plat comes and it's finally time to finalize the plan, when the plan's finalized, that they wanted that option, I guess, on the table. The applicant doesn't want to do that. I think we understand that the people on Goes Pike that live out there probably don't want that, but the city says, my understanding is, we don't want to throw this out yet, this possibility. We want to at least consider it. So the condition would allow that, but, and I can let Kendall speak to this, I think he's had more discussions on this than I have, that's a continuing discussion point with the city. From our perspective, we don't want to connect to Goes Pike. We would be happy to as the applicant. Can you comment on what your conversations have been?
Maybe, in fact, you guys could read the condition, because I know there's folks here that haven't seen it, maybe you can read the condition and all the way through, so we can kind of get a word on the access point issue. Maybe the landscape buffer too, because it's a little more detailed.
So this is at the bottom of page 9 and top of page 10. The ones for the highway business and the residential are basically the same. Number 7, applicant agrees to maintain a 20-foot wide natural buffer on the eastern property line along Goes Pike. All existing trees located on the perimeter of the development along the eastern property line, which have a caliper of 8 inches or greater, and which are located within 40 feet of the property line, will be maintained during development and construction of the property.
I just wanted to point out, it was mentioned it's a 20-foot buffer, but it's a 40-foot no development zone for mature trees, and so it's really a 40-foot buffer to some degree with a no disturb 20-foot piece along Goes Pike. Again, it's a pretty, our landscape buffer is 10-foot typically with some plantings, as you know, so a developer could come in, cut all the trees down and replant the buffer that's X number of trees per 100 feet. This keeps it natural as it is for 20 feet, and the next 20 feet, it could be some clearing, but trees of that caliber all have to stay. So
Can I ask a question about that? I'm sorry, I'm a tree guy. So I just wonder why the wording specifically that you'll only keep trees above 8 inches.
Well,
And I don't expect that you guys are actually gonna go out and caliper the 7-inch trees and take them down.
well, no, what that does, we've seen that one before, I can answer that. A lot of times we want the bigger mature trees. There are some hackberries and other trees that are invasive to some degree that would be in that 6, 7, 5, that maybe do need to come down. And what we're looking for is all the more mature trees that their landscape plan, that when it comes in, we keep that tree canopy there. There's a lot of tree canopy up here where the multifamily is going to be developed. The developers indicated they're going to attempt to keep also. But that caliper is used traditionally in a lot of the arborists that turn stuff into us, that they typically say that caliper is one that, you know, they try to maintain, and it's the type of trees in this area that we'd want to preserve. I don't know why it's 8, but I guess if there was one that was 6.5, they could technically take it down. But
Right, I'm just wondering how, like, I haven't seen it. I only say this because I've been working with the foresters for 20 years now on our own property. I just wonder how many of those 8-inch trees are there. Because if there are, if,
There's not many.
so that's what I'm getting at. So if there's not many 8-inch trees out there,
There's a few, though.
what I'm getting at is if there are not many 8-inch trees, I mean, maybe that's a standard that's been set, I don't know why, but if the standard that was in the conditions was, let's say, 5-inch, maybe that buffer would be really thick. But if the standard is an 8-inch caliper, maybe that buffer isn't very thick at all. I think that we really ought to consider that. I'd like to know how many, like, so if we say here, sure, we'll keep all the trees that are above 8 inches, but there aren't any, then we're really not allowing a natural buffer, are we?
We are for sure allowing a 20-foot natural buffer. It says no disturbance can occur within 20 feet.
20 feet is reserved.
Period. Whatever's there is not
Whatever's there is
changing.
there.
If there's a woven wire fence grown into a tree, if there's whatever's out there, it's staying as is from a visual aspect. The next 20 feet is a more kind of step-down buffer that could be cleared, could be developed, but the mature trees have to stay. If that number needs to go from 8 to 4 to 5, I don't think that was really the intent. The intent was no development occurs in the natural buffer, and the next 20 foot, potentially it really comes down to what the developers plan. What I actually saw in the conceptual plan is they're well, the 40 feet, the patio homes stay in this area here, and they're a good 100+ feet away probably from that. But the condition allows them to disturb up to that 40-foot mark. I think the intent here is we leave something in place, and it is a pretty thick visual barrier. If you walk the property and got up here, there's some pretty mature stuff in here, and all that has to stay as it is, except for potentially where the road cut would be, which would be a disturbance into that fence line and view shed of Ghost Pike.
If there is one.
If there is one, correct.
As far as specifics of the trees and the size of them, there's not been a tree inventory done, because that's a kind of a project unto itself. So if we were to try to change that number today, we would basically be guessing at it. We don't really have any data to justify one way or another what the difference would be. The point is, more to what Steve was saying, is that by preserving what's there and agreeing not to disturb it, it is creating a buffer. It's going to help with diminishing any new sound that's generated here from going over into Ghost Pike. The same as the trees that are down the property that we're not developing would kind of create a buffer for noise and any additional, disturbance from going to the south. So what's there will be preserved, and what the difference between it being 8 or 6 or 5, I can't answer today. I just don't know. I'm sorry? Yeah, so this is number 8 on the top of page 10. This is the condition about the street. The property would be limited to a maximum of 2 street access points to South Danville Bypass, 1 street access point to Hightower Road, and 1 street access point to Ghost Pike. The location and configuration of such street access points shall be coordinated with the Planning Commission, the City of Danville, and the Commonwealth of Kentucky. No commercial lot shall have direct access to South Danville Bypass. So this condition says that if there is a connection point to Ghost Pike, it would be limited to 1, and it leaves that as a possibility that there could be 1 put there in case the city wants it or is going to require us to do it. But at this time, as an applicant, we have no intention of doing that. We don't want to do it. The plan that we have doesn't require that, or lead us to want to do it. But if the city tells us we have to do it, or they want it, or they need it, or whatever the case may be, when the time comes to plat the roads, we would have to do it. So that's why it's written the way it is to not cause a problem at that point, that we have to come back and get relief from the zone change we're doing to satisfy what the city wants for connectivity. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's why it's worded the way it is.
Would you be willing to change the application to add one street access point to Ghost Pike if required by the city?
Says that.
You do the setting up.
That's your understanding already?
Okay.
My name's Kendall Wise. I work for Vantage Engineering, and as Zach has stated, the developer, it's just gonna cost him money to connect to Ghost Pike. He has no interest in connecting to Ghost Pike. And so if we were to connect to Ghost Pike, it would be at the request of the planning commission or the city. And the only advantage to connecting to Ghost Pike would be to improve circulation, to create another way to access Ghost Pike if there was an emergency and there was some problem or issue with being able to get in through the main entrance to Ghost Pike at the South Danville bypass. So I think that we would have no problem whatsoever changing our condition regarding the access to Ghost Pike to only if required, by the city or the planning commission.
So, this exhibit was in your packet, and it's in the comprehensive plan, and it landed front and center on the prior zone change we just got into on how this exhibit is addressed, interpreted, implemented. That's a road plan that was put together in comprehensive plan, put in the 17 plan of future connector streets. It's hard to tell where we're at here. We're right in, let me get my bearings here. No, we're down here, right there. There's what it shows. It shows a frontage road. It shows streets that shows a street coming from, Ghost Pike's here. It shows a new street, an access point that I guess is the furthest east one, maybe where the meeting, I don't know that. And it shows a new street coming all the way through the property, all the way down to Ghost Pike, and another street right here. But the frontage road is up here. So, again, we're only zoning this portion of the property. There's already a frontage road pattern started. The bypass is here, but that green line probably goes from all the way over. I don't know if that's what's dictating the need for a connectivity to Ghost Pike. Again, there's streets shown kind of all over this map. But this is the city's master street plan that we've been told to look at each time. I put it in your packet. It doesn't play much of a role in this case because, again, the frontage road's here. Now, these other streets or these access points, exactly these alignments, where they're at, where they're not at. This shows a new street running all the way down through this farm. I guess, again, we're all just conceptualizing here, but it appears that there'd be a new street that would sort of start up here at Boffman and come all the way down to here. That's not what the developer wants to do either. At this point, the developer wants to build, this is already gravel. There's your two access points, and High Tower is the third. This frontage road is being shown connecting simply because this exhibit indicates it to some level. But again, it's a item in the comprehensive plan. The developer doesn't want to do it. They put forward a condition. I think you all have the ability to finalize the conditions right here as you see fit in agreement with the developer. The city's indicated, as you heard, they'd like to leave that on the table at this point. I don't think the staff feels either way about it. To us, going back to the phasing plan, the proximity to this access point, I guess in theory, folks on Ghost Pike, if they wanted to get to Cattleman, they could come up here and shortcut on through. But there's an intersection just a few hundred feet away where you can turn left and get back into the shopping center area. But I guess in the theory of connectivity, it connects everything together where people can, I guess if you wanted to go to Walmart, you could come up here, shoot through the frontage road and head this direction, never get on the bypass. I think at this point, we prefer to let the applicant sort of design their project, get their street layout to us in a preliminary plat, create their lots, and suggest something in that manner. Again, to us, what we saw conceptually was not to extend the street, and that's why the dashed line stops. Because what the developer would like to do is make this and build some street connectivity to serve these patio homes, but not make a connection there.
I think he's agreed that they could do what Mr. Davenport recommended, which was at the city requirement versus us approval.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there are things that are beyond what we can deal with at the concept plan stage. So for example, like site distance and distance from that intersection, how close can we have a, access point? And that's all just too technical for what the point where we are now. And it would be better left for that decision when that time comes to do that. And to be worked out at that time. So if the city requires us to do it, and there's a motion that includes limiting to that, which would indicate a preference of the planning commission to not have a connection, but if the city wants it, okay, we would agree to that. That's consistent with what we're proposing.
I just want to add one thing about the buffer along Ghost Pike. Whether we do or don't have a road connecting to Ghost Pike, the one thing that we're not doing is we're not creating driveways on Ghost Pike. So we're creating a buffer. All of the buildings will have access back through the development out to South Danville Bypass. So we're not creating 1 acre lots all the way along Ghost Pike, which we could do today because it's zoned ag. So we're changing the zone. We're keeping all driveways. All the traffic's going to come back internal to the development, and those trees and all that mess that's there due to neglect, basically, nobody's maintaining the property, mowing it, or doing any of those things. All the trees would stay. There are some utilities that run south along Ghost Pike. If for some reason a water main had to be reconstructed or repaired, there could be some, due to that emergency, some change to the landscaping. But as a result of this development, none of that's going to happen. But I will say that I know there's a water main that runs south along that side of Ghost Pike that would overlap with this buffer that we're proposing. So that may be one reason that there aren't as many, someone in the crowd mentioned that there weren't that many big trees there. So that may be because of the recent construction of that water main, relatively recent within, I don't know how many, when it was constructed.
All right, so I will clean up the rest of our proposed conditions and just go through those quickly. For the highway business, property be developed with sufficient water supply and fire hydrants to meet fire control standards of the city. Improvements on the property will be connected to public sanitary sewer. All utility lines will be located underground. Number 4, the property will be developed in compliance with the subdivision regulations of Boyle County. Number 5, the property will be developed with a maximum of 500,000 square feet for commercial, retail, office, and professional uses. There will be no self-storage units, packaged liquor sales, or adult entertainment uses as defined in the zoning ordinance on this property. Number 6, the property will be developed with uniform street lighting designs. Lighting for parking and commercial, retail, or office or professional areas will be shoebox-style lighting designed to focus light downward and minimize light trespass onto adjacent properties. Number 7 is the landscape buffer item that I read earlier. Number 8 is the street access item that I read earlier. And then number 9, applicant agrees to 1 freestanding sign on each developed site. Commercial signage for lots fronting South Danville Bypass shall be limited to 1 freestanding type sign, not to exceed a height of 20 feet and a maximum total sign face area of 100 square feet. All other commercial lot signs should be limited to 10 feet in height and a maximum total sign face area of 100 square feet. So these proposed conditions, the idea is to create a sort of neighborhood-friendly highway business, to not have it be big, big box stores, gigantic signs out in front, to be more appropriate for where this area is located. And then the residential development conditions, these would be on both the R3, RM3, and the RM4 lots, because they're so similar. The first three are the same sort of basic conditions about water supply, sanitary sewer, and underground utility lines as with the business zoning. Number 4, the residential section will be developed with an overall maximum of 250 residential units. That would be for all of the residential zoning we're proposing. That falls within the per acreage numbers that are in the zoning ordinance, and which falls in line with the future land uses in the comp plan. Number 5, the property will be developed with uniform street lighting designs, same as with the highway business zone. Number 6, at least 50% of the residences will be constructed with at least 90% brick, stone, hardy plank, or other modern masonry materials. Vinyl siding will not be permitted as the primary exterior material for any structure. Limited vinyl siding will only be allowed for areas such as soffits and dormers. Plain face concrete blocks shall not be allowed for any exterior surface, including foundations. Number 7 is the vegetative buffer that I read earlier. It's the same as with the conditions for the business zone. Same as with, number 8 actually is a little different. The property will be limited to a maximum of 3 access points to Shannon Way and 1 access point to Hightower Road. The location and configuration of such street access points shall be coordinated with the Planning Commission, the City of Danville, and the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So those are our residential conditions we're proposing. The idea here is to get enough density in the residential to make it a valuable use of the land, have a sense of community with the people that live there, which is the idea behind patio homes and these things, but without creating over-density, over-intensity, without creating huge apartment buildings or anything. This will be much more designed to be like a neighborhood, consistent with what you see in other parts, not too different than what you see up here across the bypass. Laid out a little different, but a similar type of housing in the sense that we're building neighborhoods. We're not building big square apartment buildings. So those are the development conditions. I'm not going to go over my 6-page justification letter that I did, except to say that the application does comply with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. Just to hit a few highlights. Assure the best possible, this is county general land development, objective 1, assure the best possible utilization of land by promoting planned development and uses, utilizing the future land use map. We presented you with a plan that's in accordance with the land use map. It says should be done with this property. The other goals and objectives, encouraging small business development and growth by providing adequate zoned for commercial development. We've done that by providing services not out in the middle of nowhere, but where people live in an existing center of activity. That goes to the goals and objectives about not encouraging sprawl. We're adding a little bit more activity where there already is some. We're not doing it out in the middle of nowhere and encouraging that sprawl out into the county. The land use goal 1, objective 5, respecting the character of existing neighborhoods. This is again designed to kind of respect the area we're in with the commercial businesses along the bypass, residential behind it, with intensity stepping down off the bypass to preserve the peace for the people that live to the south and the east of the property. I'll defer to my justification letter on the rest of those. I've laid out a whole bunch of them. Those are just a few examples of the goals and objectives that are met by this plan. So sort of in summary, this application is in full compliance with the comprehensive plan, with the goals and objectives, with the design review procedures, with the future land use map. It's right down the middle with what The comprehensive plan prioritizes what it wants. In addition, the current zoning of the property is agricultural. It's not being used, it's vacant. The property's not doing anything now, so this will put the property to use. So the current zoning is inappropriate in that sense. The proposed zoning will be appropriate because it's an extension of what we already have here along the bypass, and then the residential uses behind the bypass. And then lastly, we would just ask that on the final page that you make a motion and vote to approve for recommendation this zone change for compliance with the future land use map, consistency with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, and consistency with the design review provisions discussed earlier. That really concludes my presentation. We're excited about this project. It's a pleasure being in front of you today. If you have any other questions for me or for Kendall, we'll be happy to answer whatever we can. I'll have a seat though. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak in favor of the zone change? Is there anybody that would like to speak in opposition to the zone change? Please state your name and address when you get to the podium.
My name's Will Stallard. I live on Ghost Pike. That gravel driveway coming out right there at the corner of the red thing is my driveway. Down, the long one, right there. Can you go back a slide? First off, I'd like to thank the commission for allowing us to come speak. Thank you all for your questions today to these fine folks who I know have put in a lot of work on making this development. And I thank you all for keeping or trying to keep Ghost Pike the way it is. Your buffer, I see that you're trying to take into consideration us that live and work there daily. I've been really torn on what I was going to say today, and as you can tell, I'm pretty nervous because I'm pretty attached to where I live. This is going to greatly impact me and the other people here that live on Ghost Pike. I can also see that I can't stop this thing, even if I do talk in opposition of it. I see that it's coming. I see that the city is closing in on us. My family bought that 100 and some odd acres there in 1922 in February, so we'll soon be there for 100 years. We're down to about 88 right there where we live. I have some concerns. We've got a pretty good sized drainage ditch. It's not a ditch, pretty good sized waterway that comes off Ghost Pike and kind of follows parallel to my driveway, straight through my farm, below some of these houses here. Rain event like we had earlier this week, that thing will flood like a river, and it'll run right into Ball's Branch. So as you consider to continue to develop and design, I really ask that you take into consideration those things. It's going to greatly impact, I'm afraid. Your buffer, your 20-foot buffer, 20 feet ain't that wide. It's about the size of this room. Trees up there are pretty pitiful. There's not many. So if you put a buffer in there, I'd ask for tree planting. I'd like to see some decent trees, oaks, poplar, something that's worth having. I'm not real satisfied with multifamily residential. You're gonna bring a lot of people right there at our front door. I don't know how you change it. I guess if you got to develop the thing, I'd rather see single-family use. I think it'd have a little less impact on the land and a little less impact on the people coming in and out of that bypass. I don't know. Bottom line is, there ain't a whole lot I can do to stop this thing. About the only thing we can do is ask that our opinion and our point of view be considered. So anyway, thank you all.
Good afternoon, or I guess it's actually morning. I'm Chuck Stallard. I'm actually Will's dad, and I'm part of that generation that this is going to impact. We have 5 family members that live on Ghost Pike. Currently, our daughter is building a house on Ghost Pike. I noticed nothing has been said about the sewer development that is going to be coming up through there to address all these buildings and the commercial and the residential is coming through our property. The original part came through, and I lose track of time, probably 10 plus years ago when it came from Junction City all the way to Stanford Road, right behind my house. So I do know, from what I understand, well, I won't say I know, I understand that the developer is the one that's actually going to pay for the sewer that's going to go from Ghost Pike way on down the road here. You can't see it, all the way up that drainage ditch. And talking with the city, I understand that all the easements have been agreed upon. They have not been signed yet. So sewer's an issue. Nothing's been mentioned about the 3 gas lines that come through that property. So that's a concern. But the main thing that I would like to point out, and I really appreciate, Steve, you staying after this, is the entrance onto Ghost Pike. I'm like Will, the buffer, 20 feet is nothing. The existing, quote, trees that are in there, they're not there. I've been in it. It's a cane field. It's weeds, okay? There's some old ratty trees that limbs break off along the road there on Ghost Pike. But as far as Tom having any significant trees from that highway business down to that red multi-family residential, it's nothing there. So, excuse me? Okay. So I am totally opposed to the potential of that road extending into Ghost Pike. Folks, I drive the bypass daily. I have a son who goes to Bull County High School, and we make multiple trips to archery practice and to soccer practice and things like that. Our bypass is becoming very, very dangerous. Last week, 5 wrecks on the Danville bypass, including my daughter, who was crushed right there at that intersection back in the summer. And adding more traffic to that bypass is going to impact it. A lot of wrecks are happening right up there by Cattleman's, and I think alcohol plays a key role in that. But there are constantly, if you go back and look at police reports, there are wrecks along that bypass from Ghost Pike all the way to about Kroger intersection up there. So again, I'm opposed to that road being able to extend onto Ghost Pike at any time, any point. And I'm like Will, I'm not totally against development. I know that I can't stop that, but that's the number one thing that I would want to point out to you all. Thank you.
I'm David Jones. I live on the south end of Ghost Pike. I have a new family. As you can imagine, we moved there about 3 years ago. And we lived in city limits when I started working at Center College. And we chose to move out away from the city to have a family lifestyle of the country. And Ghost Pike is probably one of the best roads in this whole county. And I'm like Will and Chuck and know that we probably can't stop the development. But I think that if it's going to go through, there needs to be some provisions, especially with the buffer, but also if there's any conversation about fiber or any kind of internet access, things like that, that are going to come down that way, they should help impact the members of Ghost Pike. Since it's going to be adjacent to our property, I think we should have at least something to extend down into. I'm totally against the roadway. I think that that's already a dangerous enough area as you even turn into Ghost Pike. The fact that we don't have a slow down lane and a turn lane is already crazy. The fact that Cattleman's doesn't have one, I think, is a little absurd, in my opinion. And I think you're going to probably have to look at the other two roadways as commercial gets built, multi-residence gets built, of having slow down, turn off lanes in that area. I'm like Chuck, I've seen multiple accidents in the last couple of weeks. I saw that I was actually there when the tractor trailer ran over the lady right in front of Cattleman's on the way to the dentist. So I've seen it. It's, you know, a lot of it has to do with people would get distracted driving. So it's not the developer's fault. It's not, you know, what's coming. But, you know, it is concerning for somebody who's got a 5-year-old who likes to ride her bike up and down Ghost Pike. I got a 1-year-old who's walking who likes to, you know, take little strolls up and down Ghost Pike. And the fact that we're going to add possible more traffic flow or anything at the entrance of that is a little concerning to me. But I'm not against development, never have been. I just think that there just needs to be some more provisions put in for the buffer to allow us to be able to enjoy what I consider the best road in town.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak in opposition to the rezoning?
My name is, I'm Bob Miller. I've lived on Ghost Pike 32 years. Been in Danville 47. And my concern is Ghost Pike and maybe an exit from this development to Ghost Pike is something we do not want. We do have a nice road, a lot of nice homes down there, and some of times the traffic is pretty heavy just with what we've got. Development is the thing we have to come to live with, and I commend Ron Pfaff in his design here. I think it will be an asset to the city. But my biggest concern is keeping all of this development from emptying out on Ghost Pike. On the drawing there, you see, yeah, they stopped, but it could very well become an issue that, well, we need to go ahead and run that on out. So that's my 5 cents worth. I just really would like to see Ghost Pike stay Ghost Pike and not have all that traffic potential flowing out on it. Thank you very much.
Just point of information, you may clarify. Is this in the city limits?
Yes, sir.
Where's the city limit boundary?
Good question. There it is. So the city limits come all the way down here, and then they go off the map, come way down this way, coming up around Mr. Boyd right there, and back. This property's in the city too. So this is actually out. So the city limits kind of comes in, goes out, comes back down to Chin Farm. All of that's in. That's the edge here, but the edge of it's way further south here. So it meanders in and out. But all the way down Ghost Pike. So I'm not sure who these landowners are here. I'm not familiar with who those properties are. So these properties are in, all of this is in, and it comes down and this way, back up, back out, back down and in.
What about the property there, the Gommers there, the border, Raven city limits?
That's why I said, is this what you're talking?
No, right.
There?
Goes by.
Yeah, that would be out.
Right more,
Oh, this one,
right more.
this one.
Right.
Oh, sorry,
This one.
this one.
Keep going right.
Keep going?
There.
Yeah, that's in. All that's in the city, yes. So the city limits, so I apologize, it goes this way, and this way. And then recently, there's been an annexation all the way out to the Stanford Road, Apex Plumbing, all that area out there too. Everything down the bypass, it's all in. So this section here is out.
Looks like to me, secret rich off.
So, and as you can see, a lot of that's already zoned. Some single family, some highway business, some still ag. Obviously, a lot of agriculture, so. Let me just say, again, I'll not answer your questions, but just make a comment, because I appreciate it. I think we're sensitive about compatibility, and I'm big on landscaping. Our landscape ordinance and the zoning ordinance gets us what we maybe have around Cheddar's, let's say, or around Buffalo Wings and Rings. It's not really truly a big visual. I mean, we make car lots, landscape, restaurants. So our landscape ordinance really, in my opinion, is not really enough to probably do what I think we all desire it to be. So we tend to say, let's try to keep a natural buffer if we can get one. What I heard you all say is what would be good is if we did some supplemental planning in there to expand that. But the zoning ordinance doesn't get us there because it allows trees, 3 deciduous trees per 100 feet and a combination of some shrubs. When you look at that 100 feet, you won't get the visual barrier. It's really more, it buffers parking lots in a Kroger's or something of that nature. I agree that there needs to be a heavy landscape or visual separation between this development and Ghost Pike. And I think we're open to whatever that needs to be that the applicant could put forward. We just thought natural buffers tend to work if there's enough tree line or cover. We want a visual barrier so that when people come in Ghost Pike, they don't see anything. That's the goal. And we'd be glad however we get there. The natural seemed to be the way we would do it. If we did supplemental planning, we'd have to probably put some verbiage in about using evergreen species, doing staggered rows or something. If we want a good, heavy visual barrier, the deciduous trees in the off seasons open up sight lines. So, evergreen species, heavy evergreen staggered rows, how we sometimes block all visibility. Staff's open to any of that. One thing that would happen, if the zone change is successful, then there'd have to be a site development plan, have to come in. That's when we get all the specifics about the road, the water, the sewer, the driveways, the landscaping, all that could be addressed. We'd see the footprint of every structure. And I can tell you the patio homes that I saw were similar to what's in Saddle Ridge behind Applebee's. There were 9 kind of fourplex style. They possibly will be single-family structures. They might be kind of a condo style where people would live there. They're not traditional apartments. That's what the nature of patio homes. They're meant to either be possibly purchased as an individual unit like a condo. And they were 9 of those kind of structures in here. And then townhomes, which again can be single-family ownership with lot lines in them. The more traditional apartments we're kind of up more towards the high tower section. Again, all of that was preliminary. So the goal was to put the lesser intense, we call it multifamily because anytime something's attached, we have to call it multifamily. But these are patio homes or townhomes for kind of single-family style use. And those would be in this area. And again, whatever we got to do to get the buffer right, I think the staff's open to with the applicant, because I think the goal here is to make a clear separation between this project and Ghost Pike and keep it in its most natural state that it can be. And I think the staff's position to that goes with the road access too.
Well, the provision that I understand, the city has the right to approve that road in Ghost Pike.
Well,
So where does planning and zoning fit into that, opposing that?
Yeah, well, it's tricky for us because we don't have full-time engineering. So we rely on the city engineer and the county engineering when we're in different jurisdictions. So what would happen is a road plan comes in And if the city says, hey, this is on our master road plan, or we want the connection, they tell the developer they have to connect. We're a sub-agency of the city and the county. But as a staff, I can have an opinion. I'm a planner, and I'm not a big fan of that connection. I'm not a fan of these frontage roads in general. I like a frontage road that has some depth, but this style of frontage road, what we've got along Kroger's, I don't think that's good planning. It happened in a day gone past. But I think what you used to see is anytime you have a bypass, you're trying to make a road connection, a frontage road, what we call a reverse frontage road or a frontage road, and it's not unusual for cities to try to make a connection from here to here and catch every street by way of a frontage road. I think we know what kind of can happen with those kind of choke points, but I think your all situation is unique because Ghost Pike is a narrow 2-lane road. It's not designed for any volume of traffic, so to bring any kind of road configuration in just is going to encourage probably a volume that really can't be supported on this leg of it right here. And that's just my opinion. I'm not an engineer.
Well, I think, everybody in this room, the developer, the commission, we're not in favor of that connector road. But I think what we're trying to say is the city manager, city engineer, city council, they're the final say on that. That's sort of outside our realm. They demand that that connector don't be there. Well, that's who you need to lobby. Well, we don't have to include it. No, the problem is they don't want to talk to us, so we ain't gonna vote. We're the county. Exactly. Right. We have, if it finally goes there, we have no say with it. Absolutely. We can request that it doesn't. Right. But we have, ultimately, we don't make that decision.
We'll at least get a look at it because we'll have to see a site development plan. There'll have to be a plat. So this body will at least be able to see something at some point. If these patio homes are the first project, we're going to see some kind of plat have to come in here to create a lot, extend this street, and we're going to know at least what the developer's proposing down to the hard engineering, probably Kendall will be involved in. And so we'll know at least that phase. But again, if this comes in and shows a cul-de-sac right here as the first phase, and we'll know, hey, that's where it's stopping, or maybe we can get the city to give us a decision at that point in time. Because I think the first phase is to develop the RM3, and there'll have to be some street extension done to serve that, and I think they've shown you what their desire is.
And I appreciate, could they take 100-foot, I'm thinking out loud here, 100-foot section of that and move it this way and keep it as agricultural to protect it, that buffer?
Well, the zone
Instead of
change,
bringing it all the way to Ghost Pike?
we're kind of getting outside of our line here. The zone change request is a legal description that comes in. It's been advertised. We can't really peel off acres off the zone change at this point in time. It'd have to be a new hearing, re-advertised. This is what they're requesting. But I think the buffer description that what happens, whether we zone this highway business or left it agriculture, the idea is to leave it in a sense like it is. So I think we have an opportunity to get the condition right on a width or what's in that natural area. Leave it agriculture, your description would be leaving it just like it is today, which is what we were trying to say with the natural buffer.
Yeah, but if they don't zone that, change that zone on that 100-foot buffer, then, we know.
They can't develop it, the way the natural buffer is.
These conditions are part of their agreement. They can't go against those conditions once they agree to those conditions.
They're recording.
Those conditions are conditions.
Yeah, they're
That's
recorded.
like in the deed.
Yep.
That's,
And there's two conditions here that are open right now. Now, one of them we can't control. If the city says you have to put that road in for whatever emergency services, we can't do anything about it. But we can approve it to say, perhaps, correct? We can approve it to say, with whatever the wording would be, like with a cul-de-sac and only connected at the city's, at the city's instruction.
I don't think we have to mention what the city's approving.
Right, with,
Take it out and just not approve that part.
I,
Because they don't rule us anyway.
right, and so I think that that's a really good point. That's one condition. The other condition, and I don't want to put this on you, but I'd hope that you guys would be open to maybe keeping that entire 40-foot, natural, instead of 20 feet. I mean, I think that that makes a big difference for those people that live there. And I don't, like, I'm not comfortable.
Like I said, not being there looking at it, but I can see the concept of thinning out that other 20 feet to help canopies grow, the trees are there, but a lot of trees smother other trees out, so.
I know that, yeah.
I can see that the concept of that, without being out there physically and seeing what there is, it's hard to make that assumption, but I can see that you need to do some thinning to help the other trees grow and mature. I can see that.
I
can see
yeah.
that it might look better to have a little bit of a more dressed area before you get to the brush area. That's just speculation. But I mean, I think we're kind of micromanaging this a little bit for zone change.
So I'll speak again, I agree with Mr. Griffin that if in fact we all have concerns about the access point to Ghost Pike, and the applicant isn't interested in the access point to Ghost Pike, that the condition number 8 on page 10 could simply have that access point to Ghost Pike removed.
Ms. Davenport, I think we might want to just think a little about the effects of that. The only reason I bring this up is if we're requiring the city to overrule us or make changes, it could cause additional procedural steps for the applicant. And this is just off the cuff here, but if, they require them to come down and have a new hearing just to discuss putting that access point on, if we know the city wants to require it and they might do it at their behest, we could leave it such that the access point is permitted only if the city requires it, rather than taking it out entirely, just to prevent them from, and if the applicant is fine with coming down and having a new hearing at the city level in order to deal with the city's demand for a Ghost Point access, Ghost Pipe access, then I suppose we could leave it in. I think we should check with the applicant, though. Yes,
Well, I
ma'am?
agree with you, Mr. Henry, and looking at future possible roads, it looks like there's some potential for this occurring anyway, which would overrule, possibly.
I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that cities can require developers to do just as they want if they want to develop.
Correct.
I think we can make a strong recommendation that that road not be, that connector road not be built. I think that would show that our desire is that ultimately, that's not a decision.
The advantage to them requiring a hearing on that will give the public, us, an opportunity to speak on that behalf if that ever comes. So that would be the only thing that instead of the city just saying, we're gonna put it in, at least there would be a hearing that we could come and oppose that at a future time. Is the only advantage, and I appreciate that, Jeff. And I sense from you all as a commission that you all, this is an issue, and I appreciate that. But any way that we can slow that process down and give us, as the general public, an opportunity to speak to the city, because I don't live in the city. I don't vote in the city. But we would want to have the opportunity to oppose that if that ever came up on the table.
Well, and I appreciate it. I mean, you're potentially punishing someone who doesn't even want to do, who agrees with you, but you're punishing them anyway.
No, the city's punishing.
The city is, us. If we require, if we put a roadblock in this that requires this whole thing to be done again, we're punishing. Something that we know that we cannot.
The technical issue here is you are forwarding a recommendation to the city. That's all you do. And the development plan is part of that. And if we wordsmith it, let's say we remove the Ghost Pipe access that we kind of all agree on, and then the city decides they want it in. That condition has to be revised. It's gonna be very similar to a case we just had, where the city would almost have to reject the recommendation, have a new hearing, start the process over, which means this whole process through here would have to be redone. And the city would, in a sense, have to become the planning commission to get the words right to their satisfaction. If we leave it in, and say it's still an option because that's what they desire, when it gets to them, I don't think there'll be an opportunity to really speak to the city commission, because when they take our recommendation, they don't hear public comments when they move through the ordinance. But at least at that point, there would be a hearing. It would be a hearing here on the site plan, and we would actually then have design plans that would be finalized with the city. And let's say at that point, the city said, we want the connection. Mr. Wise here puts it on here. There'd be a hearing here on the plat or the site plan that you guys could come in and voice concerns. Hopefully the city would be here, and this would be the final vote on that decision on the site plan or a plat. And hopefully then we'd have more information. So at this point, I think the developer's done about what they can, which is to word it the way it needs to be worded. Hopefully we can get some more detail, and hopefully the city maybe agrees to waive off that connection, like they did the traffic study, and we would do that here at the plat level or the site plan.
But if the city accepts as it is, they can just pass it through and never come back here, right?
So
No, it's gonna have to come
let me
back.
make,
I don't understand.
yeah.
We have to have a site plan. They have to bring us a site plan, what they propose to do. This is a zone change. This is where we're getting in the weeds. The zone change is whether or not their proposal for the zone change that they're coming to meets that criteria. It has nothing to do with roads or buildings or anything else. It's actually whether that piece of property meets the criteria for zone change. So we're getting a little bit in the weeds.
Yeah,
The
that's-
conditions are written, right? The conditions, but it is a zone change with the conditions as written.
Yeah, but they can't move dirt until a site plan comes in here.
They're putting the conditions before us, before they do anything else, so we know what they're not going to do.
I understand that, I'm just saying, we're just asking for, the zone change comes with these conditions. And what I'm asking is, are those conditions open for amendment?
Not unless they can, no, they'd have to formally come back and amend them, just like this.
But that's what we're proposing right now, right? Is there's two conditions that we're considering for amendment.
We can say it's limited.
Right.
I mean, they don't even have to have it in there like that, correct? I mean, they put access points, do they have to have access points in there?
No, but I think
These
having
were
them in there-
conditions that we prepared sort of voluntarily with Steve's input and help. We could have put a plan in front of you that just said, we won't do adult uses and we won't do athletic fields. That's it, and just left it at that. And instead, we've put some guidelines here to give people an idea of what we're going to do. And then if it's approved, that's when we go through the steps of figuring out the details, where the building is going to go, where are the roads going to go, what are all the technical details we have to go through on this. And what I stood up to say a second ago is, and Steve kind of hit on this point in the meantime, is this is just a recommendation to the city. Legally, under the statute, all we're doing today is making a recommendation to the city for what they should do. If the city sees this and decides that they disagree with your recommendation, or if they want to have their own public hearing, they can do that, and we can go have a big hearing in front of the city. I mean, am I correct about this, Henry? And we go have a hearing where anybody in the county, any interested person can come and talk if the city wants to do that. Also, there is a time limit of 90 days after action is taken on this by the commission, with the city has to take action, basically. They got 90 days. So what that means is between now, that's like a backstop. It doesn't mean it's 90 days before they can do anything. They've got 90 days to do something. So what that means is there's going to be some time between today, when the city takes this up, that they can be talked to. I really believe even if you live out in the county, you're still in Boyle County, you know, they're going to listen to you, what the concerns are of the people that live out there, whether you're in the county or in the city for voting purposes. I feel pretty strongly they would listen to your concerns. So I think what we should do today, what I would request that you do, is that we send this, we move this forward with the proposed conditions, let that process take place, and if the city decides they want to have a whole new public hearing and they want to do their own findings, then they can do that, but if not, we're not holding this up. We don't have to come back and do another hearing on this. I think that would be the punishment that was mentioned a minute ago, is that we have to come do this again on something that really we don't have to do this a second time. We shouldn't have to. We should just go through the process and let it work the way that the statute allows for it to work. And then the city has their part they play in this, and there's time to talk to them and to make the concerns known. Plus, they'll have access to the findings, the discussions, everything today to know how these people feel. None of this is going to be hidden from them. They'll be aware of that as well. And we would say that when we go to the city council hearing. The neighborhood's been very clear, they do not want a connection. We don't want to build a connection. Please don't make us build a connection. Same as we're saying to you today.
If it is here, and we vote on it, we voted to say, yeah, the access is okay. And I don't agree with that.
These conditions have been proposed to us, correct? We're not up and down voting because they haven't actually, like, they're proposed conditions. Are you willing to change a condition, the wording of a condition right now?
On the access, on the Ghost Pike issue,
Are you interested in entertaining a slight change in wording to that condition?
on the Ghost Pike access, yes, like we were saying earlier, if there's a motion to change the wording to say up to one access point to Ghost Pike, if required by the city engineer or something like that, yes, we got no issue with that.
Would you propose changing the condition right now?
To move it forward, to move this forward, yeah, and to take into concerns, yes, yes. Because that is the sticking point, it's what the city engineer wants to do, and that's totally consistent with where we are.
So we're just leaving it, up on the city engineer. You're not taking it out. You're just saying,
We're
it's
actually-
out unless the city engineer says it's in.
No, he's actually proposing to amend that.
Upon the city engineer's discretion, is what he just said.
Yeah, to change it to that, to force the city engineer to be the one that does
Well,
that.
that's gonna do it, people do it anyway. But I mean, that's all you're doing. All you're doing is putting this upon, you're saying,
Yeah, we're saying that we're not okay with it, that if the city engineer does that, then they override the planning and zoning commission. That's all I'm saying.
they're not overriding it. You're saying they have the option to do that.
I think we might,
You're giving them the option.
we could bridge the distance between these 2 points by just including in our motion to approve that the planning commission notes its strong objection to any connection to Ghost Pike.
I like that simple, clear, it's just a statement.
So what are we gonna do about the landscape buffer?
No, I agree, that's the other one.
So serious, Zach,
So-
maybe it
Sorry,
would be
go ahead.
simpler as opposed to doing the 20 and the 40, since the 40's got some restriction anyhow. Would you guys be open to making it a 40 or 50, just a straight natural buffer, 50-foot wide or 40-foot? And maybe we talk about some supplemental planning that's coordinated with us, and even maybe the neighborhood. I'm open to whatever we need to do to get the plannings right on that.
Do supplemental planning if you don't
Well, we-
eradicate some of the.
Well, it's tricky. Normally natural, we just say leave it. But if we say establish a landscape buffer 50-foot wide, we gotta get real specific on, because the zoning ordinance won't get us where we need to be.
The reality is, it needs planning.
Needs to be redone.
It, from that corner on down to Will's driveway, there is no substantial trees in there. I've walked it, I've been in it, I've cut.
So you're
cane.
proposing taking it all out.
And establish a,
There would be nothing there for 20 years.
Well, I'm not taking it, I'm not proposing taking it all out. If there is a mature tree in there, let's leave it, but I think some supplemental planning has got.
Why don't you leave a natural buffer for 20 feet, do some supplemental planning on the other?
in the other 20 feet.
That's,
Yeah, we're open to whatever. Again, I think it's interesting, Kendall would have to speak. We saw something so preliminary, you guys, but if you drive out here, and I put the zoning sign out, we go up a grade right here. I mean, I'm not even sure how likely we're gonna ever see any projects
road cut right there, we were.
Right in there, but what the developer showed was this road coming and stopping, the patio homes here, the commercial lots going here, and maybe another commercial lot here. The likelihood, there wasn't really even access to really kind of get to this corner. So this all was pretty much staying as is. And again, I appreciate talking to Ron, his initial ideas, well, maybe we shouldn't even zone to Ghost Pike because we don't want to kind of open up this can of worms. His goal was, look, our plan is to continue the style of commercial we're doing, restaurants, that kind of thing down through here and start this kind of area. But, he didn't show me any indication, Kendall, and you can say that we were going to develop commercial all the way down. We were going to, yeah, going to keep it natural but zone it all, just not to leave a gap of agriculture for more housekeeping.
The position that I'm in today, this is a new, this idea of supplemental planning is something that's new. So I've not talked to Ron about this. I don't know where he stands on it, so I can't agree to it today in the moment. But I can tell you that we can talk about it now that we know what the concerns of the neighbors out there are, and hearing the discussion today, that's certainly something that I will talk to him about, but I can't agree to something today that we just not discuss it. We need to look at it, see how that would work, what the cost would be. There's a lot of factors that go into that beyond just me saying yes to get this to go forward.
Where we get it is interesting because, for example, here's Azuka's lot. The zoning ordinance is going to require when this lot's developed to be landscaped according to our Chapter 4 requirements. So at some point, if we get, we're saying this has to stay natural, but if we ever had a project, that hard edge is going to be required to be landscaped according to our ordinance for incompatible uses potentially or vehicle use areas. So we'd have that 3 deciduous trees and 6 shrubs per 100 feet type standard. So we will be landscaping with some supplemental planning. The key is, if you're not developing it, we don't really have the ability to require any additional landscaping unless we wordsmith it in these conditions. And so the natural buffer felt pretty good, but I understand where we're all wanting to go. And maybe we can just leave it natural. I don't know if you could say supplemental plan to be, determined when we develop patio homes. But again, I think the goal here is to put some landscaping in. There'll be some required for all the travel ways and all of that anyhow.
I think maybe what I would suggest then is, instead of resolving this now, a better time to take this up might be with the actual site plan, when we know what the grade is going to be, what the landscaping plan is going to be, and to do it as part of that through notes on the development plan, on the plat, whatever it requires to do it, so it can be factored in at that time if it's going to be required. But to do it now when the plans are not really developed and when we don't know the details of it, it seems a little bit putting the cart before the horse, although I'm not saying we should just throw it all out. I just think that maybe that's a better question for when we have actual plans we're looking at as opposed to now.
Conditions should be removed and replaced with vegetation will be considered a site plan?
I'm saying the conditions should stay like it is, and any further any supplemental planning would be addressed at the site plan stage, or something like that.
Present your site plan, you might want to take into consideration the discussions that have been held here today.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking. Now that we know what the feedback, we have the feedback, we know how people feel about it, we can incorporate that in the site plan when that comes. But it's putting the cart before the horse to do it now when we're talking about a zone change and concepts. We're just not there on that level of detail
Back
yet.
up, so there was a site plan we did earlier, and it looks hard to see, but there's the landscape, and it's hard to describe, but there's the trees and the caliper and all that. So when we get a site plan, that's what we get. It's detailed, it's got drainage, topo, utilities, landscape, the materials, all that's what we'll get for those patio homes. When that comes in, we'll have something for that whole area of that nature, including if this was it, if there was a road connection. So it's hard to see all this, but there's really good detail about what all that is.
That makes sense.
And again, that buffer right there exceeds our typical landscape buffer of what they're doing right there. And Kendall, you did it. I can't read it from here, but those are evergreens, aren't they?
So can I ask a process question, just because I'm
Yes,
not
sir.
as familiar with it down here? When the site plan comes back, the notification letters go out, like with the zone change?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think then the.
No, we do not send adjacent property owner letters on site plans, no.
Okay.
We have a public hearing, we advertise in the paper, and,
Okay.
but we don't send letters to neighbors. But we can do that in this one case. If that's a desire, we'd be glad to send letters to all the neighbors for a site plan.
When the big decisions are gonna be made.
Yeah, see, so the letters went out.
Well, I understand.
So what I would say is that maybe a better time to address that would be at that stage, and we would agree to send out notification
We'll
letters.
do that.
Like with the zone change.
We'll do exactly what we did for the zone
And
change
then
for the site
I
plan.
will give my card to anybody here today that has questions about this, and you can contact me either before you get that notice afterwards, when, and we can talk about that more.
We'll
I
do it.
can't promise you we're gonna agree with what you want, but we can talk and we can have discussions about it, which will help facilitate a resolution, I hope, when that time comes.
We will, funny enough, that almost sounds like an additional condition that we could add on there right now, that the staff is fine with sending adjacent property owner letters for any future application files, whether it be a plat or site plan, just to make sure the neighborhood gets good notice.
Anything on that goes Pike.
We'll send it all the way around. I think we sent 30-some letters all the way around.
I just meant any development that we're gonna do on that goes Pike side that would
Sure.
do them, yeah.
We don't
would
mind
send
doing
them out
that.
for yeah.
That's fine.
I think that would address the concerns of making sure it's not done in the cover of night where nobody knows what's going on. But also, we don't have to micromanage the plan today and make a decision today that we don't have all the information we need to make yet. So
Yeah.
I think that would be appropriate.
Does anybody else want to speak in opposition to the plan zone change?
I just want to say I lost the bet. I told Lisa we'd probably get done in 30 minutes today.
Probably.
That's,
Oh.
it's us.
Well, it wasn't clear to me, did we agree that we're gonna add some additional verbiage, about, the city requiring the connection to Rose Pike, or the developer won't be the one who's reviewing that?
I would propose we let Henry forward a different, motion to accept the zone change with some conditions that we can have somebody make the motion. Is that acceptable, Henry? You have heard a couple of things people want. If you could include them in your proposed cookie cutter motion.
Mr. Chairman, I have a running list. You tell me when you'd like for me to start into it.
Okay, could you propose a motion to us then?
Okay. This is a motion to recommend approval of the zone map amendment. We're noting a waiver of the traffic study as it was submitted and cleared with city staff. We're noting comprehensive plan compliance in the specific areas of matching with the future land use map, showing a gradual change from existing neighborhoods and surrounding properties and a sensitivity to the character of the area. That's both in the proposal's zoning and its development conditions. The street continuity on the property supports accessibility with surrounding properties. The application shows an infill project where existing utilities serve in order to prevent sprawl. The proposal would add diverse housing options to the existing stock. We are suggesting an amendment to the highway business development condition number 8. And I'm looking at that condition now at the top of page 10 on your staff report, and here's how I would suggest that it read. Line 2 notes one street access point to Hightower Road, and then going forward, this is my language. And additionally, one street access point to Ghost Pike upon the city's requirement of said access point, and only in that instance. That's my suggested change for the Ghost Pike access. And add to that as well that the Planning Commission notes its strong objection to any connection to Ghost Pike. Let's see, the final added condition is mailed notice to adjacent property owners as per zone change for any future applications on property where it abuts Ghost Pike. Did I miss anything?
Okay, do we have a commissioner willing to make that motion? Okay, we have a second? Okay, thank you. All in favor, hold up your hand, please. All right, motion carries. I guess we didn't leave the public hearing first, but anyway. So the public hearing is concluded. We've already made the motions, and so I guess the next item on our agenda is 2022 schedule.
Those are in your packet, same plan, we meet on the fourth Wednesday of every month, 9 o'clock. That's the whole schedule for 2022, filing deadlines, tech review. This is in there.
Thank you all.
Formally adopted 2022 meeting schedule.
Do we have a motion that we accept the proposed 2022 schedule? Okay, do we have a second? Ms. Lee, thank you. All in favor, please hold up your hand. All right, thank you. Motion carries. Any other business anybody wants to bring before the commission? Right.
Go back to our normal schedule in January.
Okay. Do we have a motion for adjournment then?
I made a motion, I also apologize for my tardiness today, but it was on a conference call and couldn't get out, but, I appreciate you doing an excellent job.
I don't know about that, but we'll talk about you being tardy. All right, so do we have a motion to adjourn then? Okay, do we have a second? All right, all in favor, raise your hand, please. Thank you. Motion, the meeting's adjourned.
Our IT guy